Welcome back to From the Belly. I'm Doug Wheeler, and I continue to say, and I think I'll say it every episode, I'm really proud of this podcast. And as I've mentioned before, the way that I've been locating my guests is I decided months ago to stay on Facebook, and I was kind of conflicted about that. My wife had left it. I stayed with it. Then I left it. Then I came back quickly. And I thought, I don't even know why I'm here. I can connect with most of these people outside of Facebook. And then I just realized one day, wow, I think this is where I'm going to find the guest from my podcast. So we've taken on a new theme. I think we're 5, 6 episodes in. This is Why Not Church, or maybe Why Church? And I think a lot of people are asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that clergy are asking those questions. I spoke to an individual recently who will be on the podcast soon. And he said, man, I get with my pastor friends and we sometimes ask, why are we doing this? Just because it's so difficult to do, to pastor a local community. I've not had a desire to go after, this is going to sound probably judgmental, but I don't mind saying it. I'm not really interested in talking to celebrity pastors. Who fly all over the place and do all kind of stuff and claim a home church. And I'm not saying they don't have one. I just want to talk to people that are doing the organic work in a community. That's what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So this morning I have Jonny Rashid from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Jonny, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Yeah. We made a connection just like I reach out to people and sometimes I don't hear back, and Jonny responded back and we chatted for a few minutes and we realized, hey, let's do this. So we'll get to know one another better, but I've really been looking forward to this. Philadelphia is a city that I don't know a lot about personally. Have I ever been to Philly? Man, at almost 67 years old, I'm going to lie and say yes. I've been to all the major cities in the U.S. I've driven around it, man, but I've not
You
spent any
gotta get
time in
here,
it.
Doug. It's so
I know
cool.
I do. Jonny, I know I do, man. And I have mixed feelings about the Eagles. I kind of like them and then I don't like them and whatever, but we'll talk about
Wait, where
some
are you
maybe.
from? Who do you pull for?
Well, let's see. I was born in Chicago.
Okay.
5 years of age, my parents relocated to an incredibly small town in Kentucky, Elizabethtown, Kentucky, which now is maybe a population of 35, 36,000 people. When we moved there in 1964, and it was tiny. And it was a very segregated town. There was literally railroad tracks that I know are still there. And the black community lived on one side, and the white community, for the most part, lived on the other side. So I was exposed to that division early on. So it's been a long time since I've lived in Kentucky. I was in Denver for a period of time. I spent the majority of my time on the West Coast. So living in Seattle for 30 plus years, yeah, I'm a diehard Seahawk fan. I am. But my wife, who probably is a more avid fan than myself, we were looking at the roster for this coming year, and I think we recognized 2 names.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it just was weird. It's like,
So are you a
well, they
Mariners
can.
fan too?
I'm not a baseball lover.
Okay.
If I'm going to root for anybody, my wife is an avid baseball fan as well.
Well, you got Big Thumper out there.
Who is that?
That's what they call Cal Riley. He's
Okay,
a prospective AL MVP.
okay. And I mean, it's strange to be asking you in Philadelphia, how are the Mariners doing this year?
They're very good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
I
They
think
seem to
that they're contenders for sure.
they seem to disappoint the fan base every year.
Well, they've never been to a World Series, but maybe this year will be a
Maybe
change.
this year, and that's what people keep hoping for. And we'll see about the Seahawks. Well, hey, we're talking sports for a moment, and you say something in your bio about being an avid Philly sports fan. So talk to me, Jonny, about what you love and don't love about Philadelphia sports.
My parents immigrated here in the early 1980s, and they're a big part of my story, so maybe they'll come up again. But
Right on.
when they got here, Dad could pick any team he wanted because there's no loyalty, right? So he was a fan of the Showtime Lakers. He liked the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in the Michael Jordan era, so
Sure.
everyone liked Jordan. And we still think people of my generation think he's the greatest of all time. But everything changed for me when the Sixers drafted Allen Iverson, and I started watching the Sixers. And I remember the 2000-2001 finals when the Sixers played the Lakers. Dad and I had to watch. He liked the Lakers, I liked the Sixers, so we had to watch the game on different televisions. We never had
Oh
two
boy.
TVs, but we did at that point. So I could do
Boy.
that.
Oh boy.
And that's how I got into Philadelphia sports.
Okay.
So love the Sixers. They are disappointing right now. I hope they find some success. But I also got super into the Phillies. I moved to Philly in 2004, and then 4 years later we won the World Series. That was super
Yes.
exciting. In the first
Yes.
year I got here, the Eagles made the Super Bowl. We didn't win that one, but since my kids were born, we've won two. So
Yes, you have,
a
man.
real special thing for us. So yeah, big sports fan. And I used to say perpetually disappointed, and sometimes people in Philadelphia say we're cursed, but the refrain at this point is we just won the Super Bowl. So we are not cursed by any
You're
stretch.
not cursed.
We're doing well. And the Phillies are real contenders too. So that's where my mind is, even though the Eagles start tomorrow, in fact,
Oh
against
yeah.
Dallas, Thursday Night Football. Here we go.
There we go. And Sunday's the game opener for the Seahawks, always with the 49ers.
Right.
So I don't know if this is a myth or not, but I often will say to my wife when we're watching football, I say, man, remember what they say about those Philly fans, that they're, I don't know what the right word to use, like lovers of their team, avid, brutal, fierce,
Well, it
unforgiving.
is all those things. I think we're the
Okay.
greatest fan base in the country, but many would say we are the worst. We are very loyal to our
Mm,
team. We hold them to high standards. And I
yes.
think there's something about, I don't see a meaningful difference between Philadelphia sports fans, New York sports fans, and Boston sports fans. There's
Okay.
something about the Northeast
I would agree to that.
that has a certain level of intensity that in many ways the Midwest doesn't and the West Coast doesn't. There's something in the water here in the East Coast.
I would totally agree with you. And I think it shows up often in the collegiate realm. I'm a big college basketball fan. I'll watch college football. I much prefer the NFL over college football. I prefer college basketball over pro basketball. Sometimes they can be equal, but I love March time, March Madness, and the whole deal. But man, when I see an East Coast team come up, be it that they're well known or not, I'm just like, I just think in my mind, it's like, they're fierce. They're fierce because they played. I don't know, something about it, and I think you're
Well,
right. There's something in the
in
water.
Philadelphia, it's really interesting. So, as of late, Villanova has been our most successful college basketball team.
Yeah, yeah.
And we oscillate about whether we claim them or we don't because they are outside of Philadelphia. I'm a Temple University grad, so
Temple.
I would love Temple's basketball program to find more success. But we've had those years. And of course, John Chaney is a particular
Oh,
character.
John Chaney, man. John Chaney. Man.
Yeah, he's a little rough around the edges, Coach Chaney was.
Now we're harkening back to the old days. I'm soon to be 67, so I've got this nostalgia thing going on. But I was a huge Celtics fan, and now I don't even know the
Oh, we
team,
hate the
whatever. And
Celtics here. I'm
I'm
sorry to
sure you
say.
do,
They
man.
they still beat us all the time.
I'm telling you. So let's ask this before we shift to some other things. In the sport of basketball, let's talk NBA. Who have you enjoyed over the years, and maybe they're no longer playing? Who did you enjoy watching the most play basketball? The player who you would just go, that player is mesmerizing to me, and they might not be the best, and somebody might not even consider him. And it sure doesn't have to be Michael Jordan. Does a player come to mind?
It's Allen Iverson for me.
Allen Iverson,
It
man.
is, he's a guy, and we compare. This is what we do in Philly. We compare our greats.
Okay.
So Joel Embiid, when he is not injured, he is
Mm,
a formidable force.
there's no question.
But he gets caught up in injuries a lot, and sometimes the poor big guy loses heart in the middle of a game. Allen Iverson never lost heart.
Never.
Carried a whole team on his shoulders. We call him pound for pound the greatest of all time because
Wow.
he was a little guy, and I love watching him and his passion, and he had a fierceness about him that I really enjoyed watching him. And he was also, I mean, in many ways he's a problematic person. His character isn't the best, but he also brought his full self to the game.
He did. He did.
And it was because he brought himself with the cornrows and the street clothing that David Stern actually enforced a dress code for the NBA. So I appreciate Allen Iverson's cultural influence.
Wow.
Yeah. And all
You
the
know
kids
your
had their hair in cornrows because of AI. Like he was that
right.
influential all over the country. One of the most popular jerseys sold.
So why did he retire? I know this. I tell myself at one time I knew this. Why did he retire so early?
I mean, the most honest answer is that he didn't discipline himself to keep playing, and his game relied a lot on his speed. So you lose a step as you age. That's normal. You can't change that. So then who do you become? You know, he was a get in the lane kind of person, go among the trees, sacrifice his body, throw it up, and make the shot. You got to develop a perimeter game as you age because you can't always drive down the lane. That's just not what you're going to do in your 30s. What you could do in your 30s is different than what you could do in your 20s. And honestly, that relates to pastoring too. I was a 20-something church planter. Lots of energy, lots of excitement, plenty of mistakes made. But the social energy and capacity that it takes to plant a church is basically fine-tuned for a 20-something. You need both the ignorance, you need the confidence, a little bit of stupidity because you're going to do things that your rational 30-year-old self wouldn't do. There's something about being that young that it helps you plant a church. And then you learn over time that there's other ways to pastor, more mature ways to pastor, and every era has, at least in my experience, different things to offer us. And AI just didn't learn what his next era offered him. And I hope we all can learn who we are in our bodies as we move into new eras of time and wisdom and so forth.
Maybe he also knew. How many years did he play in the NBA?
I don't know, but less than I would say less than 15.
You can check it out.
I'll check it out.
Check it out, Johnny.
So he played 14 years. There we go. I was about
14
right.
years.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, well, at least he's not one of these guys that just kept going, and that kind of that old boxer analogy of you stayed in the ring too long. I mean, he got out. Is he still in the Philadelphia area?
Yeah, he is, and he's a supporter of the team, an ambassador to the team for sure.
Okay. He ought to meet you someday.
One day, maybe I'll meet AI.
Why not, man? Let's go right into what you were talking about. I know nothing about your journey in regards to you started church planting. How does a 20-some-year-old with parents, if I heard it correctly, that immigrated here from Egypt, I mean, how in the world did you end up planting churches? And was it Mennonite churches? And then
it was an Anabaptist church that I found. My parents moved here as persecuted Christians from Egypt, and it was their status as a religious minority in Egypt that shaped them both theologically and politically when they came to the U.S. So,
what year was that they came?
Early 80s. I can't recall the exact year, before I was born. And as a result, not only did their fundamentalism shape them politically, they gravitated towards conservative politics because at the time, Ronald Reagan's hostility towards Muslim countries. So they found a friend in Reagan. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's how they saw it. And as a result, they became, very both theologically and politically conservative. But my status so they grew up as religious minorities. They became a part of the religious majority, and that shaped them. I grew up as an ethnic minority during 9/11, and that shaped me.
Were your parents Mennonites?
No, they weren't. They were just evangelicals.
And your father wasn't in professional clergy work?
No.
Okay.
So I wanted to hold on to the seed of faith they gave me, but the things that Jesus was calling me to, the way that I was convicted, was in opposition to the global war on terror, for example, after 9/11. But almost every Christian I knew in rural south central Pennsylvania, Lebanon County is where I grew up, was for the Iraq War, for the invasion of Iraq. And I didn't know how to fit into that because viscerally I opposed it. I didn't even know of a peace tradition in Christianity. I just thought Christians supported war and they supported George Bush. I moved to Philadelphia to study journalism and political science. I eventually got a degree in education and taught a couple years in Philly's public schools. But I moved here in search of who I was going to be, and I found more solidarity with the anti-war movement than I did with Christians, until I ended up at a church that was both earnest in following Jesus and anti-war, and a pastor in that church became close to me and mentored me and discipled me and eventually called me to plant a church. So I left teaching to plant a church in 2010.
And how old were you then?
4.
And how did you end up at that church?
Well, my roommate in college, or one of my dorm mates, said we should check out this church. They look kind of cool. So I went and I walked in, and on the side of a computer monitor was a bumper sticker that said, "War in Iraq? No." And that was the first time I knew Christians could oppose the war in Iraq. I didn't have to trade my faith for my political convictions.
And were you actively going to church at that time?
I was trying different places, and I wasn't really finding my way.
Okay.
I
Okay.
wasn't finding a sense of a community or chosen family.
Does that church still exist, the one you speak of that you
It
don't?
doesn't anymore, but it existed for some time, yeah.
Was it a Mennonite
It
church?
was part of the Brethren in Christ. It was an Anabaptist church.
Okay.
And
Okay.
before it closed, I was there for 12 years, ready for something new. And I
Wow.
applied to be a pastor here at West Philadelphia Mennonite Fellowship. And I got the job. Amazingly, I didn't have to relocate. I could stay in Philly.
And during that time, you completed seminary.
I did, yes.
Okay. Okay. Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with this pastor and the formative time in that? And then was that the springboard to seminary and kind of on to your current pastoring role?
Joshua Grace is the pastor, and he mentored me, and I count him very close to me and crucial to my own vocational calling.
Mm.
But I wanted to keep learning about the Bible and theology. I wasn't trained to be a pastor, and so shortly after I started, around 2013, so that was 3 years after I started,
Mm.
I applied for Palmer Theological Seminary's MDiv program. Now that's Eastern universities, not far from
Okay.
Villanova, actually. Throughout my adult life, I wanted to stay in Philadelphia, so I wasn't going to travel or move for school.
Mm.
And Palmer was a good option. Ron Sider was there. He's
Yeah.
an Anabaptist thinker. Rich Christians in the Age of Hunger would
I
be
remember when that book came out and
1976, right?
I was
Yeah.
involved in a campus ministry in the early 80s and man, we read that.
Powerful
We read
book.
that. It
Um,
is.
And, Craig Keener and other people were part of the seminary too. So I look very fondly on my time at Palmer. I love my professors there.
Hmm.
And in addition to an online community of Christians that I became friends with, Palmer and this community expanded my mind theologically and moved me out of the
Hmm.
constraints of my theology and learned about many other traditions and developed a lot of ecumenical appreciation for different traditions.
And did you when you entered seminary, so it was a 4-year experience. Was that
I did it slowly,
3
so it
years?
was probably close to 5.
Okay. Okay. 5 years. You crammed 5 into or you crammed 4 into
It's a
5.
pretty bloated degree too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were at it. Talk to me about this calling. Pastors, especially as I've started this new theme, they reference a calling, and I always want to ask about. So, what did you experience in this? Was it a kind of a Paul on horseback type of experience, conversion experience, or was it more of kind of a slow checking in with your heart and your mind and other people affirming that? How did it happen for
When
you,
I
Jonny?
walked into Simon Gratz High School, where I taught my first year, I thought this is the first day of the rest of my life. I thought I was going to be a teacher.
Wow.
Joshua is the person who saw in me the possibility of being a pastor. So I hadn't thought about it before, but he called it in me. And I thought I could only be a pastor at this church, and then going to seminary expanded my mind about it. And I thought, I can get down with these Anabaptists and eventually call myself a Mennonite. So it was a slow calling. And really, the big calling of my life, and I think all of our lives, is as that we follow Jesus, we love God, we love others. That is everyone's vocation who follows Jesus. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to minister in line with that vocation and in that calling. So, I think we're all called, those of us that follow Jesus, to be ministers in our own right. I believe in the priesthood of all believers, and I'm grateful that I get to do it professionally.
Educate us about Mennonites. I think that I often will hear people say something like, Mennonites, are they Amish?
That's very common. People look at me and they're like, "You're a Mennonite. You don't look like a Mennonite."
So tell us about that.
There's not a lot of Egyptian Mennonites. The Mennonite
Hmm.
movement started 500 years ago, 1525, where the first baptisms happened in Zurich, where
Hmm.
Conrad Grebel and Felix Mons baptized each other. And
Oh,
they were martyred as a result of that, because the adult baptism, was an affront to the crucial infant baptism, which was very important to the Christian state, the state church, and so forth. So there
so
was
it's
an act.
heretical,
It was an act
heretical
of
to do.
rebellion for sure. We call it
Wow.
the Radical Reformation. So we went further than the magisterial reformers, like Calvin and Luther and Zwingli. We
Hmm.
went
Hmm.
further. Menno Simons would be the one that lasted among them, who was able to, on the run, escape his own martyrdom. And in our tradition, I have the Martyr's Mirror over here. That is the Anabaptist. That's the second most important book in Anabaptism, because it chronicles this faith, the faith of the martyrs. That starts with Jesus. That's the first martyr, and moves through history. I think into the 1700s. So this is a faith that's sacrificial, built on simple living, not collecting political power, rooted in peace and justice. That is the tradition that we're part of, and I think it has a lot of relevance today. We resisted the state church 500 years ago, and we are still resisting it today. So sometimes my friend Joanna will say, we've been resisting Christian nationalism for 500 years.
So what is the current state church that you're resisting?
Christian,
how do we?
I would say in the United States right now, the state church is the one that Christian nationalists are trying to form.
Okay, trying to form but haven't formed.
Well, we're in the middle of the battle now, and there is a battle between American democracy and Christian nationalism. For my part, my concern is with the integrity of the church, less so with the integrity of the Constitution or American democracy. Not that I'm not grateful for the freedoms that it offers and the order that it offers, but my fidelity is to Jesus, not to a constitution. So my resistance of Christian nationalism doesn't come from an American perspective. It actually comes from a Christian perspective.
And this fidelity that you have to Jesus, how did this? I mean, you grew up in a Christian home, but that doesn't always translate to. I mean, sometimes that can translate to somebody saying, "I don't want anything to do with that." I
Yeah, there was
reject all of
definitely
that.
moments where when every Christian around me supported the war in Iraq, I didn't know how I could be a Christian.
Okay.
And the irony was the critiques that I had of the Bush administration specifically, I felt came from the Bible. I mean, just the basic Sermon on the Mount, enemy love, loving your enemies means not bombing them. That felt really basic to me.
Okay.
But to many Christians, that was ridiculous. That was far from what Jesus was calling us to. So it was interesting to me that, and I grew up in a biblicist, biblical family. We read the Bible together. And so
Yeah.
the love of the Bible actually formed my own political viewpoint. Like my ministerial philosophy, my theology, my politics are all, in my mind, very much rooted biblically. And so I credit my parents for giving me that seed of faith and love of the Bible. And it is that it is a central revelation for me of God today.
Can you walk us through? And I'm sure there's probably a lot of details in this, but maybe at a high level, can you walk us through what your relationship has been with the Bible and how it's changed and what is that Brueggemann's, those three, and we've heard other people talk about the typologies of construction, no, disorganizing and reorganizing. I think that's
Sure.
right. So where have you been because so many people say they believe, and I'm not saying this about you, Johnny, but so many people, I believe in the Bible and I believe what the Bible says and whatever. But then if you really, really, I think if you really approach it, it's got such troubling aspects to it. The
Absolutely.
Bible, it's a hard book to hold.
I think people realize that the Bible is challenging. And so I think what they do is they try to rid it of its challenge by saying it is, for example, inerrant.
Yeah.
That's like a real basic way to see the Bible. Any critical challenge to the idea of inerrancy, it's like, I used to call it, it's a house of cards. And any wind, any breath of criticism will make it topple. So if you go into a public university with the idea that the Bible's inerrant, it only takes one sociology class to topple it down. So you either have to, and if the Bible is that fragile, then it breaks apart. Or you ignore modern scientific epistemology. Like, you can only hold one in that context. And so, rather than letting the Bible be as fragile as the inerrant understanding of it is, I allowed it to be challenged and to say, no, it doesn't speak to scientific truths in the way that we understand them. And it can be true even if it isn't a book of science. And it isn't a book of science. Its truth is beyond scientific epistemology. It doesn't contradict scientific epistemology. It is telling us something different. So wondering if the Bible is true and then trying to verify it in a fundamentalist or scientific way is asking the Bible the wrong questions. It is like asking if a love song that your lover wrote to you is true. No, it is a love song. A poem isn't true or false. It has its meaning is not based on that binary and its power and its importance. And so that framework helped me to study the Bible critically without losing my admiration for it.
I definitely want to learn more about your day-to-day work in let me get it right here, West Philadelphia Mennonite Fellowship. Do you do the majority or all of the preaching?
3 out of 4 Sundays generally.
Okay. And how do you choose? And I'm thinking about, I've gone to a lot of different types of churches, but of course, in the Episcopal Church, the passage in one sense is chosen for the rector or priest because everybody, and there's something really cool about that or something,
I
and
love
so,
that.
yeah. And so the priest has to, and I know because I talked to one of the priests of a parish I attended. He's like, I don't want to mess with this text this week. I don't give a shit about this text. I don't know what to do with this text, man. Where it finds me personally in my life right now, it's not what I would gravitate to even reading, and I don't even know how to offer it to this congregation. But I got to do something with it, and it's something about that I like. It's like
Hmm.
can't cherry pick that.
I love that.
Okay, so I'm curious, how do you approach that, and what do you do with passages that you just go like this individual was claiming? It's just like, man, this is not what I want to do this week, but I'm called to do this.
I follow the Revised Common Lectionary for that reason.
Okay, all right.
And the RCL already does some of that curation for you.
Okay.
So it'll give you a psalm, and in the middle of the psalm, there's all this imprecatory stuff that's real difficult. And for the public reading, they skip over that part. So the RCL already does that for you. And so for me, if we're reading a psalm that has a difficult part, we read the difficult part because it is important for us to embrace it and to
Mm,
hold the question and the difficulty. Next
mm,
Sunday, I
mm.
usually follow the RCL, and in the summer I do the Old Testament passages, and I love the Old Testament, or I call it the Christian Old Testament,
Oh, yeah.
as opposed to the Hebrew Bible, because they are different books actually in their order. So I want to honor that. I'm invited to speak at a different church next Sunday, and the passage, they're using something called the narrative lectionary, and they asked me if I would follow it. I said, sure. The passage is Genesis 22. That passage is when Abraham nearly sacrifices Isaac.
Boy,
That's a tough passage. I have kids and stuff, right?
man,
So
I'm telling you.
what do we do with that? How do we, and I think wrestling with the scripture is really important.
Mm,
And if you can do that, if you can wrestle with the hardest scriptures, then your love for the Bible is a lot harder to challenge because you're already going for the most
yeah,
difficult parts.
yeah, you've been there. So, Johnny, and maybe there's a list of individuals, who comes to mind that's mentored you in a way that you saw them wrestle with the scriptures that way in a similar fashion as you're doing? Because we're all formed. I love the Tom Petty line. People are what people make them. So I think of that and just I apply that to many things. But who do you look to, or you've looked to go, man, the way that individual wrestled with that passage and didn't shy away from it, that has mentored me in the way I, Johnny, approach it. Anybody come to mind? I'm sure.
Well, there's a lot of people that come to mind. I mean, there's a professor at Eastern University named Pete Enns who would be somebody that has influenced me. He has a podcast called The Bible for Normal People. I really recommend it. He is
Okay. Thank you.
he is a faithful Christian, but a serious biblical scholar.
Mm.
He was actually kicked out of Westminster, which is another Philadelphia area
I
seminary,
know. Yeah,
because
yeah.
he challenged inerrancy. He has a whole story about that.
It seems to always be a good sign that you've got kicked out of something.
Yeah, I guess so. So Pete Enns is one of them, and he's a real historical kind of critical reader. I really appreciate that. More than Pete, and I respect Dr. Enns a lot, are the liberationists. Gustavo Gutierrez, James Cone, these people that taught me how to see that the Bible is good news for the oppressed, good news for
Mm.
the captives. That is the framework from which I first understand the Bible. Hey, that's how I see it. I should
My
mention
brain's
Dolores Williams, too. Sisters in the Wilderness, really important scholar for me. Wilda Gaffney would be another one.
so my thank you. My brain is doing something to me here, and I guess I'm just going to follow it. You'll have conversations with people that you don't even know all that well, or you know them well, and they say something, and it's kind of almost off the cuff, and it becomes maybe one of the most important things you ever heard them say. I was having a conversation with an individual that I don't know that well who's moved out of the area, but man, this has stuck with me because I was reading Spong at the time, and there's things about Spong that I really like. But I was reading through. I've even forgotten that. Well, I know what it is. I think it was the book he finished right before he died, and John Shelby Spong. I'm sure you know. And it's called Unbelievable. And somebody might pick that up to go, okay, so he's going to deal with these 12, I think it's 12 truths, like the virgin birth and the resurrection or whatever. And he's going to say, these are unbelievable things, but believe them. And he's going, don't believe them the way you've been taught to believe them. And he deconstructs every one of them. Even if I don't agree with everything, it's still, I like that process. Like, I like the, the chutzpah in that,
Yeah,
the
sure.
commitment to that. So this individual, we were talking about the resurrection of Jesus because it was just something that we were having coffee about and it just came up. Man, and it made me think of it when you said about the liberation work. I essentially said, so why do you believe in do you believe in the physical resurrection of Christ? And he goes, I do. And I'm thinking, okay, but I mean, somebody could tear that apart. But he made me believe it according to at least within his own self, because he said, I've spent so much time reading liberation theology and those the oppressed and the suffering. And if Jesus didn't raise from his body didn't raise, then that does it gives them no hope for their bodies to raise. Now I don't
Hmm.
know all of what that means, and maybe you do, but man, when he said that, I just went, I actually might believe now in it. Because I still believed in Jesus, and I do. And I mean, Spong makes a good point that you don't have to believe in a physical resurrection for Jesus' spirit to be alive. But man, when he said that, I went, there's something about that. Does that resonate for you? I mean, do you know what he
Totally.
was referring to? All right, man. Talk
Christian.
to me, Johnny.
I think Christianity is a materialistic religion. It deals with the material world around us. God became flesh, a human being like us in the incarnation, died like we die, and rose again in physical body. It is a material matter, not. It is also a spiritual matter, but it is material. And the materiality of Jesus' resurrection suggests that we can make material change now. We can
Mm.
affect people's actual lives, their bodies in this moment. And so it gives us hope to change the material circumstances around us because God did this material miracle in resurrection.
So it's a bodily thing.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. We could keep going with that. Thank you. So I've got a few questions that have come out of some of our earlier conversation. What is the role of the pastor in the face of the authoritarianism we face?
The central thesis of the Bible and of anyone who follows God is to worship God above all other gods. That is what the Christian life is. And we have to keep preaching that God is the only one to be worshipped. Similarly, in my tradition, we would say Jesus is Lord. Both of those statements have they're politically determinative, so they have political consequence. If you decide to only worship God, and if Jesus is Lord and holds a political office, then all of our other pursuits of political power need to fall by the wayside. Loving God means elevating God to a political status above other rulers. What Christian nationalists want to do is replace God with their political power, with their wealth, their military power, and so on. And that is Israel's great sin in the Old Testament, why they keep falling into captivity, because they keep trying to collect political power from other sources and without
Mm.
trusting in God. And so I think the Christian pastor today, in the face of authoritarianism, says our strength doesn't come from the authority of a political figure. It comes from God. And worshiping God, the act of worship has political meaning. And it is a fundamental repudiation of earthly, worldly power. And so I think that in the face of authoritarianism, we need to elevate God as the one to be worshipped, not the United States, not a president, not a political office, not political power.
And it is kind of crazy making, isn't it, for so many folks? At times, even my head is just spinning with the authoritarianism, be it Christian nationalism. I mean, it's all about the rhetoric is all about worshiping God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Louder in some ways, I guess, because they have such a big platform, in the political money and in the militarism and all of that. But I mean, it's kind of like, wow. I mean, these worship services that sometimes, the camera will be panning over and you got all these politicians raising their hands. I saw one of these, and I think it was real inside the White House, and I'm watching, and I'm just like, there's no hope. I'm not saying there's no hope, but at that moment, I just went, oh my God. I mean, this is right in the center of power.
The idolatry that Israel and Judah and so on are guilty of doesn't express itself in ritual worship. They're still worshiping God ritually, but God is saying, you've afflicted the poor, you've oppressed the foreigner, you've hurt the vulnerable. Your worship doesn't mean anything, because even though you're doing the right things in ritual worship, it doesn't express itself in your life. And Jesus takes us further and says, you're like a whitewashed tomb. You're clean on the outside, but full of bones in the inside. You haven't forgotten to tithe a tenth of your mint, dill, and cumin, but you forgot the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and righteousness, or justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You forgot what you look like after you walk away from the mirror. You've strained out a gnat and swallowed a camel. So you worship God on Sundays, but then you oppress the migrant the rest of the week. You've strained out a gnat, and then you've swallowed this oppression.
And of course, so many people in those congregations, I know this to be the case. They will say, I'm not oppressing any migrants. I'm not. And I think a lot of times the oppression is total denial of even the facts. It's like you leave church and you got Jesus in your pocket and you go home and you do your personal devotions and you stay true to that and whatever. And Jesus remains small, even though you think of him as something large that you're surrendered to. And you turn a blind eye to really the details of what's actually happening in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And what do you trust when you see the cameras on the internet and you go, okay, was that trumped up? I guess pun intended. I visited the local jail here yesterday, and I thought the reason I'm here is I got to get more rooted in this community. Man, did I learn a lot, man.
Wow.
Dude, did I learn a lot. And I know something about the jail and prison system. Not that I've spent time there, but I used to do work way back when with a chaplain who brought me in. And that's back in the days that you could just walk into a county jail. They didn't do any background checks or anything. I had access to prisoners, the whole deal. I was a college student. It was crazy. And then we'd go off to the state penitentiary in LaGrange, Kentucky. And he was an ex-Marine and he was a Baptist pastor. And he was still, even though he loved Jesus, he was still looking for a fight in a way. It's kind of like, don't mess with me. Anyway, so I did that just because I feel more rooted and grounded in even the Sermon on the Mount by going yesterday. Man, if you take the Gospels out of the Bible, what do you have? If you take those four, what do you have?
Well, you move for one thing, you remove the biographies of Jesus, so you lose that.
And what happens when you lose that and you lose what you cling to is the Sermon on the Mount and the other things that Jesus, if you remove those.
Do we still have the Acts and the epistles?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the truth of God exceeds any individual book of the Bible, and the truth of God would find a way to emerge. I think that the character of God in the Old Testament is reflective in the character of Jesus, not contradicted, not improved upon, but it is the same character in a different context. A key theme of the Old Testament is that God's love endures forever. And as Christians, we see that endurance in the person of Jesus. But even without the biographies of Jesus, the truth would still be revealed. So
the truth would still be revealed.
That is how I see it, for sure. And in many ways, the Gospel of Matthew is a commentary on Old Testament, and the teachings of Jesus are found in in the rabbinic period teaching as well. And so I don't think that the hope of God and the hope of Christianity or Jesus rests explicitly on the Gospels. I am grateful for them, and they are inspiring and important. But I think the truth of God would transcend even losing the Gospels.
That's a good word. I'm looking at the various artwork you have behind you, and I'm noticing your credentialed Palmer Theological Seminary. But I'm to your right, over your right shoulder, and my left is Rembrandt's The Prodigal Son. So talk to me about that, what that means to you and Nouwen's work.
That's right. That's exactly. Henry, the most meaningful thing, I mean, Nouwen is a great book on, the book is on the painting, really.
Oh, yeah.
And so Nouwen, in that book, taught me to be transformed just by gazing at art. And so it is incredible to see what his hours of meditation on a single piece of art did within him. And so, what if we slowed down and saw the world as God's palette and actually worshipped God in creation? What can we learn in that meditative practice? For me, that's the big takeaway of the text. And there's specific things he talks about with the story itself and returning to God and all that. It's beautiful. But the bigger thing for me is like learning where God is all around us.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, and that kind of goes. Go ahead.
Eventually, you move from wondering where God is to seeing a world where God is everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a lyric in a song that goes something like, "I used to wonder where you were, and now I wonder where you're not."
Man, how do we slow down, Johnny? How do you slow down and take in? What are some of your practices for the hard work? I want to learn a little. I got a few more questions, but I want to learn a little bit more about the work you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis within your congregation. But how do you slow down in
It's
this day and
it's
age?
it's for me the biggest a few ways. A key discipline of my life, 15 years of ministry, is going on quarterly retreats, silent retreats. I actually go tomorrow to one. You schedule them in advance because if you try to fit them in your schedule, you'll never find time. So they become a part of your schedule. Contemplative prayer, also taught to me by a Villanova professor, Martin Laird. I'm looking up at his books. He has a book called Into the Silent Land. Meditative practice helps me slow down, and those are like spiritual practices. And like many men in their late 30s, getting a pair of binoculars and watching birds is another way that I do it.
Interesting.
And for me, birding is an important part of that.
Oh, wow.
And watching birds helps you lose any anxiety you have about the world. Jesus asked us to consider the birds, and my friend Jordan has an Instagram account called Consider the Birds. He has photography of birds that he took, and when you watch birds who live into their purpose instinctively, you learn that you also have an instinctive purpose, and sometimes existing is all you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Entering into the water, specifically the ocean. We're by the Jersey Shore here because the tide and the power of the tide teaches me that I am small and the sea is great. And when I walk in and I can feel my own buoyancy, the sea is carrying me. And I don't have to feel responsible for the whole world because God is. So those are ways that spiritually I engage. But honestly, so is just recreation. Going to ballparks. I like baseball. See, I like football too, but football is barbaric. It's violent. It's aggressive.
It sure is.
Baseball is slower paced in some ways. It seems slower paced. It isn't timed, although now we have a pitch clock and a hitter's clock and stuff like that. But we don't know when the game is going to end. So it teaches you to slow down. But then also, in the game itself, I've never agreed with George Will, but I did agree with him on this. When you consider all the decisions that need to be made as a pitch is thrown, it's amazing how fast-paced baseball is. But that's another way. I think there's a lot of like deep spiritual practices that we can do to slow down. But the best way to do it is to actually enjoy life and enjoy one another, to eat slowly, to enjoy the food.
And it's yeah, and just enjoy
and the company you keep.
Dude, seriously, and just a good conversation with somebody. Even if you're at a party or something and there's a bunch of people that you want to talk to or they want to talk to, if you have just one good conversation with another human being,
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was at an event recently, and the quietest person I think in the neighborhood was very extrovertish with me when we got on a certain topic, riding motorcycles. I never would have imagined.
But you're a biker?
Gosh, no, man. My wife won't allow me to own one, and I honor that. I mean, I could go out and get one, but it would be problematic. But when I move it away from, wait a second, I'm a free human being. I can go out and get one, but then I think about the risk. But I tried to get him to confirm the risk to me, and he's like, dude, I've had 3 accidents and I'm walking around. And then it's like, okay, man, you just blew it up for me. I was going to tell me how dangerous it is to ride, and then I'll be cool. My dream is to, and he said he's owned Kawasaki's, he's owned Hondas, but he said BMWs, I've owned 5 or 6 of them. And I give myself permission to covet every one that I see, those touring bikes. But he said, you get on one of those. He said, I rode one day and maybe a few up in Alaska. He was from there originally. He said, I rode 1,000 miles in one day and wasn't even close to being saddle sore because the way the bike is built and the way he'd added some things on that weren't stock. But he said, I could ride forever and not feel any kind of body ache at all.
That's
thought, wow,
wonderful.
because isn't that beautiful, Johnny? So, are your parents still living? Do they live in the area?
They live close by, yeah.
So they're grandparents too. Tell me a little bit about your family and You have 2 kids?
I got 2 kids. They're in school in Philadelphia with me, and my parents live in central Pennsylvania with my sister. They're all out there, and yeah, we kids love their cousins, so we try to connect with them as much as we can. But there's definitely tension between me and my family, and I have decided to set boundaries around certain conversations. The cost of that is intimacy, but the cost of not setting boundaries is my mental health, and that is a clear. The math there works out for me.
Okay. And they're in more of a rural. They're outside of Philly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not even in the suburbs, further out, but not driving distance for sure.
How often do you think about Egypt?
All the time.
Do you?
All the time, especially.
What does that mean for? And you're in your late 30s or early 40s, Johnny?
Yeah, late
Okay.
30s. But I'll turn 40 in a few months.
Right on. What does that mean to you? And you've been, I assume you've
I've been there
traveled
a few
back.
times, yeah.
What? Because some people leave even a county or a state or whatever, or they leave a
I
country.
have more of
And
an identity with Egypt as my home than I do central Pennsylvania.
wow.
So there is something about, because I grew up in an Egyptian household, so Egypt's important to me. The Middle East is important to me. One of the reasons why the genocide in Gaza, for example, feels so personal to me, why I'm wearing a keffiyeh now, is because those are our people. The borders that separate Egypt and Palestine are just human-made borders, but they are our family too. So I feel a real strong sense of connection with Egyptians, with Palestinians, with Arabs, all over.
I guess that could be another episode we do about all of that's happening in Israel and Gaza and what was it, the January? Was it January 7th?
January, yep. October 7th.
Sorry, October 7th.
January 6th was the insurrection. On October 7th was that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Do you have grandparents that are still living that are in?
I have one left.
In Egypt.
No, no one in Egypt anymore. She lives in the Lehigh Valley.
I like this one. Considering the church's complicity with Christian nationalism, is being a Christian still relevant?
I mean, I think that's a question that pastors need to wrestle with. I think that we need to figure out how to make the church relevant, because all of the oppression, the authoritarianism that surrounds us in the United States is principally supported and propelled by Christians. Without Christian support, we would not be in an authoritarian regime.
Donald Trump would not be elected.
No, I don't. I think that the evidence is there. So then what do we do with that? It compels the question, why are you still a Christian? If Christians are responsible for all this pain around us. And it's a spiritual question. It's an interior question about the claim Jesus has on you. What kind of gospel do you want to preach? I will not cede any of Christianity to its worst interpreters. So I'm competitive in that way, where I will claim it all and resist how I would say Christian nationalists colonize it to their ends. Because a sober reading of the scripture and a following Christian tradition should convict Christian nationalists. So I am confident in that, and I want to express that in my ministry as much as I can.
And I would assume West Philadelphia Mennonite Fellowship expresses itself the way you express yourself.
They are very hospitable to me, and we are a good match for sure. Very proud to be named among them.
Wow. And you've been pastoring there for how long?
2 years since I got there May 2023.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about this congregation.
They've been around for 45 years in West Philadelphia, outside of University of Pennsylvania. They're idealistic communitarians that have grown up. Many of them are boomers now, and they have millennial children like me. So one of the most special things for me is pastoring people my parents' age who see me as a peer, see me as their pastor. I'm honored to be in that position and to learn from them, especially their parenting as I parent my young children. It's a beautiful community and I love them very much.
Can it sometimes be a bit of a mind bender for you that you're pastoring people that are twice your age? Is that at all kind of like, initially it's just kind of like, wow, I mean,
it is amazing to me, and it feels deeply honoring. I come from an honor and shame culture, and we honor elders. To be given that honor as a pastor from my elders it's not mind-boggling, but it is deeply honoring.
Okay.
And I receive it with gratitude.
How many people consider this to be their home church?
I would say about 150. So it is a sustainable size for us. We are happy. We want to be sustainable. That's kind of our goal. But we don't want to be a mega church either. We're happy with the size of who we are.
So there's not a, and I don't ask this from I ask this from a place that it seems like it's inherent in small congregations to get larger. We need to get larger, and
No, they don't have that instinct.
they don't have that instinct.
No, I probably have it more than many of them, but they don't have it. I'm an old church planter, so I still have those muscles in me. But they love each other. They want to care for each other, serve each other,
and then express that in the community.
Absolutely.
So I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that some of these folks, or maybe all of them at different times, show up at protests or out on the
Absolutely,
streets.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they show up in numbers. They get arrested. They do all kinds of stuff.
Okay, and you included, Jonny.
Yeah. I've never been arrested. I'm not in a position to do that right now, but I lead protests and so on. Yeah, it's a big part of my job.
But you could be arrested, correct?
Yes. It is never. So thus far, it hasn't been my intent to get arrested, although you can do that.
Your intent, right.
If you engage in civil disobedience and you have a strategy and jail support, and that's the idea behind the action.
Okay.
I have supported people in that position, but I haven't. I've decided that risk is too great right now.
But that doesn't mean you're not actively protesting.
No, we're very active, and so am I. Yeah, absolutely.
But you're not trying to get arrested.
I'm usually not on what we call the red team.
Okay. Are you afraid for your safety and for your kids' safety in this climate? You're in a major city. You lead a community that's pushing against power.
I am cautious, but I don't feel afraid.
You don't feel afraid?
No, I am grateful that I feel relatively not anxious and censured, but I am sober about the real risks that people face. I am a citizen born here.
Mm-hmm.
I carry my passport with me. They're looking for people like me.
And you didn't, Jonny, there was a time, however long ago, that you didn't carry your passport with you.
Right.
This is indicative of what's happening.
I make sure that it's on me, sure.
Wow.
And I'm afraid of harassment. I've experienced racism.
I was going to ask.
And my work is largely about protecting the vulnerable, not confronting the oppressor. So that is how I posture myself. And no, I don't go it alone. I do it in community. I do it with teams. We do it strategically. And I am comfortable with the level of risk I'm willing to take. And others in different social positions are comfortable with theirs. And so I'm not afraid because I try to be as aware as I can.
So in your immediate neighborhood, are you aware of, at least maybe sometimes conscious of, that you're seen as other?
Yeah,
you're seen as in your immediate neighborhood.
Yes, in my immediate neighborhood, absolutely.
You don't have to go out into the rural area to be seen as
exists,
I'm a person
I'm
of color.
In the neighborhood of Fishtown in Philadelphia, an old Irish Catholic neighborhood. Gentrified now, but largely white, and I'm aware of that difference.
Okay, there's this one other question that I feel like I have to ask, and it'll be the last one. How can a pastor be sustained for lifetime ministry in the face of increasing burnout? I referred to that earlier. I don't remember if it was once I hit the record button or prior when you and I were chatting for a few minutes.
We already talked about how to slow down.
We did.
Another thing a pastor can do is not be in charge of everything. Own what you're responsible for, and don't try to be responsible for everything. The church belongs to people. It doesn't belong to you as the pastor. You're not.
It's a good word.
You're not if a pastor wants to be a CEO, they'll burn out or abuse their power. Limit the power you have. Give it away.
Give it away.
Decide that there are things you don't want to do.
Okay.
Don't make the success of the church your personal success. Love your people and set your boundaries. And also set the portion of time you're going to be at a church. Don't overstay your welcome and make it harder for the next pastor. Chart your hours. See how you're working. Those are basic things. And again, the biggest thing I would say is don't be the owner. Don't be the executive.
Yeah, owner and operator.
Don't do what you're given to do.
In service of.
And set parameters around that.
Jonny, I think it's in Ephesians 5, I think, where Paul gives these different titles of, and some refer to this 5 something, apostolic something, but apostle, teacher, prophet, shepherd. I don't know if I'm getting all those right.
I think it's pastor, apostle.
Apest, I think it's APAST.
Apostle, pastor, apostle. Yeah, I forget what it is too.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But are you all of those? Is a pastor, even though everybody pastors a little differently in personality types and whatever? But are you all of those to this congregation, or
the 5 spiritual gifts in Ephesians? We just looked them up: apostle, prophet.
Jonny, thank you.
Apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher.
There we go. There we go. Are you all of is a local pastor of a small congregation called to be all of those, or is that like no? I mean, somebody's doing more prophetic work and
There's
somebody's
definitely
doing more.
pastors have to be a little bit prophetic, but I don't think they are prophets in and of themselves. They have to have some apostolic edge to them.
Mm.
They have to think about evangelism in a certain way. They're teachers too, but they're pastors. They shepherd the flock. They care for the flock.
And that's what Jonny is.
Above all, caring for my people is my main job.
I got one other question, Jonny.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, man, because we're going over a little bit. If you have a few more minutes.
Yep, I do.
So I'm reading First John the other night, and I'm back to reading the Bible. There was a considerable amount of time that I just couldn't read it. I'm back, and I'm glad to be back, and I'm reading it. But what struck me in First John 3, I think it's the third chapter. Essentially, the writer says, this is extremely paraphrased. It probably sounds too, Southern style, Kentucky. Some would say even redneck would not be the right thing to say. But he basically says, you don't need anybody to teach you anything. You have been, what's the language that's used, at least in the translation I was reading? You have been, need it in front of me, not blessed, not ordained. It'll come. But anyways, you don't need anybody. Oh, sorry, Jonny.
That's okay.
Should be better prepared as a host. But it's essentially saying you don't need a teacher. The Holy Spirit, I think it's clearly implied, even doesn't say that literally. The Spirit will teach you. You have everything that you need. That really hit me. I just like, wow, I got so many people teaching the Bible and this. It came out of a conversation with my wife, and she basically was saying, at my age, I'm just sick and tired of how many people are trying to teach everybody something. Self-improvement stuff and church
Sure.
stuff. It's like, and sign up for this and I'll teach you this and I'll teach you that. And she said, I'm so saturated. I'm just trying to hear my own voice and trying to figure out. And I don't need any more information, I don't think. What do you do with that passage? I mean, how do you read that in context of you've got I'm going to use the word blessing, but he uses a different word. You've got the blessing. You've been given the gift. You don't need to be taught. What do you do with that? A congregation doesn't need, I'm just throwing this out there. A congregation doesn't need somebody to get up behind a pulpit or whatever and say, I'm going to teach you and instruct you. It's like, you guys got what you need.
I think that we all have the stuff that we need to read and understand the Bible and the Christian tradition. In Anabaptism, we do it together as a community. You don't need a seminary degree. You don't need an education. You don't need the experts. They help with some things. They're not useless, but they're not paramount.
Okay.
The Holy Spirit works in us and in our bodies, I would say more, in as much as you don't need to be taught, you can't learn just by yourself. And what I mean is you need a community of people. You don't need a pastor, you need a community of people. In many ways, a pastor is just a practical, because we all have jobs, a pastor is a helper of God in a sense. So it serves a practical end.
I like that a lot.
And ideally, we would just work on a stipend. That's not how the world works, so we try to make it sustainable. And there's a lot of pastors who do it bivocationally, and God bless them.
Yeah, there are. The word is anointed. You've been anointed. You have the anointing is the translation that I read. But I love what you said there, and as you do it in community, you don't do it alone. Jonny, how do we want to close out today? Man, it's already well beyond your lunchtime, man. Well beyond your lunchtime. Tell us about your podcast.
Well, yeah, stay in touch with me. You can follow me at Jonny Rashid, JonnyRashid, on any of the social media platforms. I have a Substack, too, I'd love you to subscribe to.
Wonderful.
And then our podcast is called Frontlight. It's Mennonite Actions Podcasts. And you can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've had some me and Joanna Lawrence Schenk and San Francisco, mind you, have had some great conversations with people. Our latest episode is with Isaac Villegas on migrant justice from a Christian perspective. Really good conversation. Highly recommend it to you. And then from go ahead. And then from there, you can follow Mennonite Action and what Mennonite Action's up to, too.
And you wrote a book, too.
Yeah, Jesus Takes a Side.
And what year was that published?
2022.
And do you still stand by the book?
I do. I'm about to lead a book series on it.
Oh, man.
Starting in a few weeks, yeah.
And so somebody, if they forget the title, they can just remember your name and look it up, and it's on Amazon Books and all that good stuff.
Jesus Takes a Side.
Jesus Takes a Side.
Yep, that's the book.
Beautiful. Jonny, this has been a gift, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Doug. Thanks for the
Really,
conversation.
man. Philadelphia, man.
Go
I'm gonna go
Birds.
look at. I'm gonna go look at some AI clips.
Oh yeah, do it, man.
One of my favorite Celtics Robert Parrish, man.
Yeah.
Watching back in that Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Danny Ainge. I mean Larry Bird. Man,
Sure.
what a coast to coast fight with the Lakers, man.
Fun times.
Fun times. Jonny, bless you. Thank you. Stay
Thank you
with
so
me.
much.
Thank you, man. When I hit this thing, we need to make sure it uploads. So this has been a great episode. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So stay with me until we see it.
Yeah, you got it. I know.
Thank you, man. You know how it works.
Yep.